Welcome back to the Emma podcast. I'm Anna, and today I'm joined by Eric.
Today, we're diving into something that's been coming up more and more in executive meetings and board discussions across life sciences: sustainability driven manufacturing.
Not as a marketing concept, not as an ESG slide in an annual report, but as an operational priority.
We're talking about carbon accounting, green facilities, and what all of that means when you're operating in a highly regulated, FDA inspected GMP environment.
And I think what's interesting about this topic is that for years, sustainability felt somewhat separate from compliance. It lived in the corporate responsibility world. It was about brand positioning and investor expectations.
But that separation really doesn't exist anymore.
Manufacturing leaders are now being asked to reduce energy usage, measure scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions, improve water conservation, rethink packaging, and do all of that without disrupting validated processes.
That's where the real complexity starts.
Because when you operate a GMP facility, nothing is just an upgrade.
If you change an HVAC system to make it more energy efficient, you're not just lowering emissions. You're potentially affecting temperature controls, humidity, air pressure differentials, and clean room classifications.
And those are not minor adjustments. They're validated parameters tied directly to product quality.
I've seen companies underestimate that connection.
They implement a sustainability initiative, maybe a new building automation system designed to reduce energy consumption, and only later realize that the system touches environmental controls that were part of their original facility qualification.
Now, suddenly, what was meant to be a positive environmental step turns into a validation exercise, change control documentation, and potentially even regulatory notification.
That doesn't mean sustainability is incompatible with GMP. It just means it has to be approached strategically. Uh,
Carbon accounting is another area where this tension becomes visible.
when organizations start formally measuring emissions, they often discover that their largest contributors are utilities and clean room operations. And that makes sense. Like, clean rooms are designed to be controlled, stable, and constantly monitored. That control requires energy.
So the executive question becomes, how do we reduce carbon impact in an environment that is intentionally energy intensive?
And that's not a simple technical problem, it's a cross functional one.
Engineering teams may propose more efficient air handling units. Facilities may suggest adjusting airflow rates during non-production hours. Sustainability teams may push for renewable energy sourcing.
But quality and regulatory teams have to ask, what does this mean for validated state?
If airflow is reduced after hours, is environmental monitoring still sufficient? If temperature set points are modified, do we need updated risk assessments? Are stability profiles impacted?
Those are not theoretical questions. They're practical ones that determine whether sustainability initiatives succeed or stall.
Packaging is another interesting example.
There's strong pressure to reduce plastic use and improve recyclability. That's understandable. But in pharmaceuticals and medical devices, packaging isn't just cosmetic. It protects sterility, stability, and tamper evidence.
A switch to a more environmentally friendly material might sound straightforward, but it can trigger compatibility testing, extractables, and leachables assessments, and potentially submission updates.
So the conversation shifts from can we make this greener to can we make this greener while preserving regulatory commitments?
That's a very different discussion.
And then there's supplier impact.
Scope 3 emissions reporting requires companies to look beyond their own facilities and examine their supply chains. That means asking suppliers about energy usage, transportation emissions, and sustainability practices.
But supplier qualification in regulated industries is already complex. You're evaluating GMP compliance, audit history, quality performance, reliability.
Adding environmental performance into that equation introduces another layer. And while sustainability matters, quality cannot be deprioritized.
So, again, it's about integration, not substitution.
From an FDA standpoint, sustainability isn't currently mandated in the way that GMP compliance is. The agency is focused on product safety, effectiveness, and quality.
However, any operational change, whether motivated by cost savings, efficiency, or environmental goals, is still subject to change control and validation expectations.
That's the key point.
The FDA may not ask how many metric tons of carbon you reduced, but it will absolutely ask whether your facility modifications were properly risk assessed and validated.
And that's where companies need to be thoughtful.
Sustainability driven manufacturing is not a side initiative. It intersects directly with facility qualification, engineering validation, quality systems, and regulatory strategy.
The organizations that handle this well are the ones that involve quality and regulatory teams early in sustainability planning, not after decisions are made.
Because once a green initiative is already in motion, it becomes much harder to realign it with compliance requirements.
Sustainability is becoming operational. It's influencing how facilities are designed, how utilities are managed, how suppliers are evaluated.
The real question is not whether life sciences companies should pursue sustainability. It's how they do so in a way that strengthens rather than complicates their regulatory posture.
And that's what we're going to unpack in more detail. How carbon accounting works inside GMP environments, how green facilities can be implemented without jeopardizing validated states, and how organizations can align environmental responsibility with FDA expectations in a disciplined, structured way.
Because sustainability and compliance don't have to compete.
But they do have to be coordinated.
One area where this becomes very practical is carbon accounting itself.
When companies first start measuring emissions seriously, it often begins with Scope 1 and Scope 2, direct emissions and purchased electricity. That's fairly straightforward from a reporting standpoint.
But in manufacturing, especially in life sciences, scope 2 electricity tied to HVAC and clean room operations is usually significant.
And once those numbers are visible, leadership naturally starts asking, where can we reduce?
That's where engineering and quality have to sit at the same table.
Because let's say a facility decides to install more energy efficient air handling units. That sounds simple enough. But those units directly affect airflow velocity, particulate control, and pressure differentials between classified spaces.
Even small fluctuations can affect environmental monitoring trends.
So the sustainability initiative becomes a validation exercise.
You need impact assessments, you may need partial requalification of utilities, you need documented risk evaluations that explain why product quality is not affected.
And if you're mid campaign during that transition, the operational planning becomes even more critical.
I have seen organizations do this well.
They phase upgrades carefully, they build validation activities into the capital plan. They treat energy efficiency improvements exactly like any other engineering change.
And because they do that, inspections go smoothly.
Where it becomes risky is when sustainability initiatives are treated as facilities upgrades without quality oversight from the beginning.
Another area we're seeing growth is water conservation.
Many pharmaceutical and biotech facilities use purified water systems that are continuously circulating and highly controlled. Reducing water waste sounds environmentally responsible, and it is, but these systems are microbiologically sensitive.
Any modification to flow patterns, storage capacity, or recirculation schedules must be carefully evaluated.
Again, sustainability is possible. It just requires structured validation.
There's also an interesting shift happening in new facility construction.
More companies are designing greenfield sites with sustainability embedded from day one. Energy efficient clean rooms, smart monitoring systems, renewable energy integration.
When sustainability is built into initial design, it's far easier to align with GMP.
It becomes part of the user requirements specification. It's accounted for in facility design qualification. It's validated alongside everything else.
Retrofitting an existing site is more complex. It's doable, but it requires deeper change control and potentially more documentation.
And that difference matters strategically.
Now, let's talk about packaging for a moment.
This is one of the most visible sustainability discussions in pharma and medtech.
Reducing secondary packaging, switching to recyclable components, minimizing plastic.
But regulated packaging isn't just a marketing choice. It protects sterility. It maintains stability. It ensures tamper evidence.
So, if you change a material, you may trigger stability studies. You may need to evaluate extractables and leachables. You may need to update labeling documentation.
And depending on the product, that could require regulatory notification or submission.
This is where sustainability decisions intersect directly with regulatory timelines.
You can't just decide to change packaging and expect it to be implemented next quarter.
It needs to be sequenced with submission strategy, inventory planning, and potentially global regulatory coordination.
That's why sustainability must be aligned with regulatory strategy from the outset.
Another layer is supplier sustainability.
Scope 3 emissions reporting is pushing companies to examine upstream partners.
Supplier audits may begin including environmental practices alongside GMP compliance.
But here's the important point. Environmental performance cannot override quality performance.
If a supplier has strong sustainability metrics but weak quality controls, that's not a viable trade off.
Patient safety remains the primary obligation.
So, organizations must develop balanced supplier evaluation frameworks that incorporate sustainability without compromising compliance.
From an FDA perspective, the conversation remains focused on control,
The agency is not currently auditing companies for carbon output.
but it absolutely expects that any facility modification, process adjustment, or material change is controlled, documented, and validated.
That means sustainability initiatives must pass through the same QMS infrastructure as any other operational change.
Change control documentation,
Risk assessment,
validation protocols,
training updates.
periodic review.
When sustainability efforts bypass those systems, they create exposure.
When they flow through them, they strengthen operational maturity.
And I think that's really the broader theme here.
Sustainability driven manufacturing is not a parallel track.
It's becoming part of core operational strategy.
Companies that recognize that early and integrate sustainability planning with regulatory and quality functions will move faster and with less friction.
Companies that treat it as a separate initiative often find themselves revisiting decisions after the fact.
And in regulated industries, reactive adjustments are always more expensive than proactive alignment.
So the real opportunity here isn't just reducing emissions.
It's designing manufacturing systems that are both environmentally responsible and inspection ready.
That balance we are talking about is achievable.
But it requires coordination, engineering rigor, and disciplined change management.
And that's exactly where structured advisory support can make the difference between a sustainability initiative that stalls and one that strengthens the organization long term.
And that's exactly where structured advisory support can make the difference between a sustainability initiative that stalls and one that strengthens the organization long term.
Because when sustainability is treated as a strategic transformation rather than a facilities project, the entire conversation changes.
Instead of asking how to reduce energy consumption in isolation, organizations begin asking how sustainability goals align with regulatory commitments, capital planning, and long term operational resilience. That shift in mindset is critical.
For example, carbon accounting is often the entry point. Once a company begins formally measuring Scope 1, Scope 2, and Scope 3 emissions, leadership gains visibility into where the most significant environmental impact actually occurs. In manufacturing, that impact is frequently tied to utilities, clean room operations, and supply chain logistics.
But measurement alone does not drive improvement. The next step is identifying reduction strategies that do not destabilize validated processes.
If a site determines that HVAC optimization offers the greatest opportunity for carbon reduction, that initiative must be evaluated within the context of environmental monitoring data, airflow validation, and contamination control. The sustainability team may see an opportunity for efficiency, while quality and regulatory teams must assess potential impact to GMP conditions.
When those teams collaborate early, sustainability upgrades can be phased in with proper risk assessments, validation protocols, and documentation updates. When they do not, friction emerges and progress slows.
Water management presents a similar scenario. Many pharmaceutical and biotech facilities rely on highly controlled purified water systems. Reducing water waste or improving recirculation efficiency may support environmental goals, but any adjustment to flow rates, storage capacity, or sanitization cycles must be validated carefully.
These systems are microbiologically sensitive. Even well intentioned efficiency improvements can introduce risk if not thoroughly assessed. That is why sustainability initiatives must flow through formal change control processes.
Change control becomes the bridge between environmental ambition and regulatory discipline.
Every modification, whether driven by carbon reduction, energy efficiency, or material sustainability, should be documented with a structured impact assessment. That includes evaluating potential effects on validated state, identifying any required requalification activities, and determining whether regulatory notification is necessary.
In many cases, sustainability driven changes do not require external regulatory submissions. However, they still require internal documentation that demonstrates control and traceability. During inspection, the motivation for the change is secondary. What matters is whether the organization maintained oversight and protected product quality.
Another area that requires careful integration is supplier sustainability.
As Scope 3 reporting gains importance, companies are asking suppliers to disclose emissions data and sustainability practices. That conversation is valuable, but it must not dilute existing supplier qualification standards.
GMP compliance, audit performance, and quality metrics remain primary. Sustainability performance can be incorporated into supplier scorecards, but it cannot override compliance risk.
The strongest supplier programs are those that evaluate environmental responsibility alongside, not instead of, quality reliability.
There is also a broader operational opportunity embedded in sustainability planning.
Facilities that are designed or retrofitted with energy efficiency in mind often gain improved system visibility through upgraded monitoring tools. Smart building technologies, enhanced data tracking, and more precise environmental controls can improve not only carbon performance, but also operational consistency.
When implemented properly, sustainability investments can strengthen quality oversight rather than compete with it.
For new facility construction, the opportunity is even greater.
When green design principles are incorporated during the initial planning phase, sustainability and compliance can be aligned from the start. Energy efficient HVAC systems, optimized cleanroom zoning, and renewable energy integration can be built into the user requirements specification and validated alongside other critical systems.
In those scenarios, sustainability does not feel like an add on. It becomes part of the operational architecture.
The challenge is greater in existing facilities, where upgrades must be layered onto already validated environments. That is where structured planning, phased implementation, and cross-functional governance become essential.
Sustainability in regulated manufacturing is ultimately about balance.
It is about reducing environmental impact without increasing regulatory exposure.
It is about aligning ESG commitments with quality systems.
It is about designing operational improvements that are defensible during inspection.
Organizations that approach sustainability with this integrated mindset tend to move steadily forward. They avoid reactive corrections, minimize validation surprises, and maintain regulatory confidence.
Those that treat sustainability as separate from quality often encounter resistance, delays, or unintended compliance challenges.
The future of manufacturing and life sciences will increasingly require both environmental responsibility and regulatory rigor.
The companies that succeed will be the ones that recognize these are not competing priorities, but parallel obligations that must be managed together.
And when sustainability strategy is structured, validated, and aligned with FDA expectations, it becomes more than an environmental initiative.
It becomes an operational advantage.
Building on that operational advantage, the next phase of sustainability driven manufacturing involves long term governance. It is not enough to implement isolated environmental improvements. Organizations must embed sustainability into ongoing decision making processes.
This begins with establishing clear internal ownership. Sustainability initiatives that lack defined accountability often lose momentum or conflict with compliance priorities. When governance is formalized through cross-functional oversight, environmental targets can be evaluated alongside regulatory impact before decisions are finalized.
Carbon accounting, for example, should not remain solely within ESG reporting functions. The data generated from emissions tracking can inform capital planning, supplier selection, and infrastructure upgrades. When carbon data is reviewed in parallel with risk assessments and quality metrics, it becomes operationally actionable rather than purely informational.
Another critical consideration is documentation architecture. As sustainability initiatives expand, organizations must ensure that records related to facility upgrades, system modifications, and material substitutions are traceable within the quality management system. Auditable records protect the organization during inspection and demonstrate that environmental objectives did not compromise GMP compliance.
Environmental monitoring programs may also evolve. More energy efficient systems often incorporate advanced sensors and automated tracking tools. These technologies can enhance real time visibility into environmental conditions. When integrated correctly, improved monitoring capabilities can strengthen deviation detection and corrective action processes.
However, any automation or monitoring enhancement must be validated appropriately. Computerized system validation, data integrity controls, and cybersecurity safeguards remain essential. Sustainability initiatives that introduce new digital infrastructure must adhere to the same regulatory standards applied to any other quality impacting system.
Packaging and material sourcing present another long term planning opportunity. Rather than implementing rapid changes to reduce environmental footprint, organizations can develop multi year transition strategies. These strategies may include phased material testing, stability studies, and coordinated regulatory submission updates to minimize disruption.
Global regulatory alignment should also be considered. While FDA expectations remain centered on safety and effectiveness, other regulatory authorities are increasingly discussing environmental impact in policy frameworks. Companies operating internationally must anticipate how sustainability expectations may evolve across jurisdictions.
Proactive alignment strengthens resilience. Organizations that document environmental decision making processes and integrate them into risk management frameworks are better prepared for both regulatory inquiry and investor scrutiny.
Capital investment strategy is also influenced by sustainability objectives. Energy efficient infrastructure, renewable energy integration, and waste reduction technologies often require upfront investment. When evaluated alongside long term operational stability and compliance durability, these investments can support both environmental and regulatory goals.
It is important to recognize that sustainability initiatives can improve operational consistency when executed carefully. Reduced utility strain, optimized airflow design, and upgraded monitoring systems may enhance system reliability. In those cases, environmental performance improvements contribute to product quality protection.
The key distinction lies in execution. Sustainability cannot be implemented informally in regulated manufacturing environments. Every change must be structured, risk assessed, validated, and documented.
As regulatory landscapes continue to evolve, organizations that demonstrate disciplined integration of sustainability and compliance will differentiate themselves. Environmental responsibility will increasingly intersect with operational maturity.
Sustainability driven manufacturing is not a trend that replaces compliance priorities. It is a complementary objective that must be pursued with the same rigor applied to any GMP controlled system.
When governance frameworks are strong, sustainability initiatives support long term stability rather than disrupt it. They enhance infrastructure planning, strengthen documentation practices, and reinforce operational transparency.
In the years ahead, regulatory agencies may not mandate carbon reduction targets directly, but they will continue to expect control over any change that affects manufacturing conditions. Organizations that treat sustainability as a controlled operational transformation rather than a separate initiative will navigate that environment confidently.
Ultimately, the integration of carbon accounting, green facility planning, and FDA expectations represents a shift in how manufacturing strategy is defined. It is no longer sufficient to focus solely on output and efficiency. Environmental stewardship is becoming part of operational accountability.
The organizations that approach this shift thoughtfully will build facilities that are both environmentally responsible and inspection ready. In doing so, they strengthen not only their sustainability profile, but their regulatory foundation as well.
As sustainability continues to move from corporate reporting into operational execution, the most important takeaway is this: environmental responsibility and regulatory compliance must advance.
Manufacturing in regulated industries has always required discipline. Facilities are designed with precision, systems are validated methodically, changes are controlled carefully. Sustainability does not replace that structure, it must operate within it.
Carbon accounting will continue to influence capital planning and supply chain decisions. Green facility design will shape how new sites are built and how legacy sites are modernized. Packaging and material sustainability will remain part of commercialization strategy. Each of these areas intersects with GMP oversight, validation requirements, and inspection readiness.
Organizations that approach sustainability strategically tend to experience fewer disruptions. They integrate quality and regulatory teams early in planning discussions. They document environmental modifications thoroughly. They conduct structured risk assessments before implementation. As a result, sustainability becomes an enhancement to operational maturity rather than a source of compliance tension.
There is also a long term resilience component to consider. Energy efficient systems, improved monitoring tools, and optimized infrastructure often lead to more stable manufacturing environments. When designed correctly, sustainability upgrades can reduce variability and strengthen environmental control. That stability ultimately supports product quality.
However, achieving that outcome requires coordination. It requires engineering, quality, regulatory, and executive leadership alignment. It requires realistic timelines and structured validation planning. Most importantly, it requires an understanding that sustainability initiatives are not separate from the quality management system. They must be embedded within it.
As environmental expectations continue to rise globally, regulated manufacturers will need to demonstrate not only product integrity, but operational responsibility. The ability to show that sustainability initiatives were executed under controlled, validated conditions will become increasingly valuable.
Sustainability driven manufacturing is not about choosing between environmental goals and compliance. It is about designing systems that satisfy both. When approached with discipline and foresight, sustainability strengthens long term operational strategy, regulatory confidence, and organizational credibility.
The companies that recognize this integration early will be better positioned for the next phase of manufacturing evolution. They will not view sustainability as an obligation layered on top of compliance. They will treat it as part of the foundation.
And that is what ultimately defines sustainable manufacturing in regulated environments.
Thank you for joining us for today's deep dive. If your organization needs support aligning sustainability initiatives with GMP requirements, strengthening your change management strategy, or modernizing your manufacturing infrastructure, Emma International is here to help. You can reach us anytime at info@emmainternational.com or visit us at emmainternational.com.
Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and Spotify so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and stay innovative.